My name is Stain Joseph, and today I'm gonna be presenting my head and neck anatomy project, which is the skull. What is the skull? The skull is composed of 22 bones that are joined together by sutures. Saying hello to my good friend Melanie. Hello, Melanie. How are you today? Well, we're gonna use you for my project. Alright, for the neurocranium or the cranial vault, we have 8 bones. For the facial skeleton, facial bones, or visceral cranium, we have 14 bones. For the neurocranium, we have some paired and unpaired bones. The frontal bones, the occipital bones in the back and posterior, the ethmoid bone, and the sphenoid bone that we can only see the greater ring are unpaired. The parietal bones that constitute the major part of the dome on the superior, and the temporal on each side of the head are paired. Now, the parietal bones, they are separated from the frontal bones by the coronal suture. Coronal suture. Like this. The parietal bones are separated by each other by the sagittal suture, and the parietal bones are separated by the occipital bones by the lambdoid suture, and they are also separated from the temporal bones on the side by the squamous suture. Why it is called squamous? It is called squamous because that's the squamous part of the temporal, while this is the mastoid process. All right. So recap. We have the frontal bone in front, anterior, occipital bone in the back, parietal bone that constitute the major part of the dome, the temporal bones on each side, the ethmoid bone under the frontal bone, and the sphenoid bone that is right behind the ethmoid bone that constitute the cranial base. We can only see the greater ring of the sphenoid bone because it has a greater ring and a lesser ring, and also a body. All right, now we're going for the facial skeleton. Well, just like the neurocranium, the visceral cranium has also paired and unpaired bones, but here it's more easier. For unpaired bones, we only have the vomer, superior, and on the maxilla, the 2 maxillae, 1 maxilla, and the mandible. Another interesting fact about the mandible is it is the only movable bone of the face and pretty much of the whole head, the whole skull. The only movable I can do. When I open my mouth and close it, the mandible is the bone moving. Alright, for the paired bones now, we would think that the frontal bone is part of the facial skeleton, but it's not. It's part of the neurocranium. For the paired bones, we have the zygomatic. They call them cheekbones, right here. That's what you touch on your cheeks. We have the nasal bones that constitute the superior portion of the nasal cavity on the outside. Is one of the boundary. We have the nasal concave from the lateral side of the nasal cavity, a little bit inferior. The ethmoid is more inside, but just to show the place of the ethmoid bone, I put it in the nasal cavity right there, but it's more posterior. Besides the mandible that is a big prominent bone, the two maxillae are very prominent, and they are very important in the facial skeleton because they pretty much connect with all the bones of the face. They connect with the zygomatic bones, they connect with the nasal bones, they connect with the vomer, they connect with the palatine bones that we cannot see on a frontal view unless we would cut the head. Maxilla is also connected to the palatine bones that we cannot see on the frontal view. And lastly, we have the lacrimal bones. The lacrimal bones are closer to the nasal bones, but they are in the orbital cavity. They are more internal to the maxilla and the nasal bone. They are more internal. We cannot see them well. I tried to draw it in orange. So just to recap, the facial skeleton has 14 bones, right? We have the vomer and the mandible that are unpaired. The mandible is very prominent, it's just one bone, and is the only movable bones of the face. Then we have the paired bones, the zygomatic on the side, which are the cheekbones. We have the maxilla, which is another prominent bones that connects with pretty much all the bones of the face. We have the mandible, they connect with the mandible, with the zygomatic, with the nasal bone, with the lacrimal bones, and the palatine bones that we cannot see on this. And finally, the nasal concave that are in the nasal cavity a little bit inferior. And the little vomer right there. Hello, vomer. All right, I think that was all of the skull. And yeah, now we know that we have a neurocranium and a visceral cranium. Well, thank you for watching this video. This is just the first part of the project, and we'll say bye-bye, Melanie. We'll see you next.